Hey, everybody. Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. I'm John Martin.
And I'm Dean Reverman.
Dean, I feel like for a long time, we've always been like, is it time for RFID? Is RFID here?
Yes.
Is the RFID year?
Is it the year of RFID?
I feel like we've established the last couple of years that, yes, it's here.
It is.
It's already here.
It is.
And it's here to stay.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, barring some insane new technology that we're just not
I don't think that's
ready
happening.
for.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we've also established that, it fits in alongside barcoding these days.
Oh, yes.
It's not a,
complementary.
one or the other. It's
That's
complementary,
right.
yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So now maybe that question now is, for some of our VARs and some of our partners out there, is this really right for me, though?
Oh, I see.
Maybe I've been an AIDC reseller for a while, and I'm all into, the barcoding stuff, and like I figured that out. I don't know if I'm ready for RFID. I don't know if I want to dip into this yet. I'm not sure.
It's a good question, right? You hear all this chatter about how it's growing and, becoming ubiquitous in all these retail establishments and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Should I join?
But we know sometimes, folks can be a little hesitant. This isn't an emerging technology anymore at this point, but still maybe not one that you're ready to fold into your particular portfolio.
We're going to convince people otherwise today?
That's the plan. I hope so, yeah.
There you go.
Or at least gives you the pros and cons to help you understand why you would or wouldn't, and what's at stake for you there.
Fair enough.
We have Chris Brown joining us today from TSC
Oh, good, because I wasn't going to go through that.
We have an actual expert to talk about it. He's going to tell us. He's going to help us explain that. Where is RFID growing? What should these folks do? Is there a reason to make that leap right now? We're going to talk about some of the labeling mandates the top retailers have out there and where that fits in. Because if you need a good reason to do it, if you want to work with some of these big dogs, that's a pretty good reason. And then we're going to talk about some industries and use cases, that are really starting to dive into RFID, where he thinks there might be opportunities to grow and expand. And
I like that.
If you are getting into RFID, to figure out where should I go, where should I be aiming at?
Nice.
And then he'll tell us a little bit about how TSC helps out there and makes things easier for anybody that wants to do an RFID play.
I'm looking forward to this one.
I am too.
Good stuff.
All right, all that plus value to the VAR. What's TEConnecting with us? It's time to plug in and get connected.
Welcome to the TEConnect podcast. It's time to get connected.
All right, as I mentioned, our guest today is Chris Brown. He is the RFID program director for TSC Printronix. I mean, he is the man.
Yes.
When it comes to RFID.
20 years
I'll mention
experience,
this,
I think.
Yeah, I'll mention this more at the end of the show, but we've done a couple webinars with TSC about RFID stuff. Chris usually does a lot of those. And when he does, they're always highly professional.
Yeah.
They are very well rehearsed, very well educated, very informative, beyond probably what he's even going to get into today. There's plenty more good stuff there. So I'll recommend checking those out also. But again, my point is, I know we got an expert. So Chris, tell us a little about your background. How did you come into the world of RFID and become this expert program director that TSC leans on all the time?
Okay, well, thank you guys for the introduction. So I've been in barcoding for 28 years, but specifically in our world. When I say our, I mean TSCs and BlueStars. I've been in our world for 26 years. Most of that time was focused on barcoding, but the last 6 years exclusively RFID. How did I get into this? Accident, like almost all of us in our industry, looking for a job. We found a job, it looked okay. We took it, and here we are 28 years.
Right.
Yeah. And hence a recent winner of an AIM award, correct? Back in just last year. Yep.
Oh, that was AIM was 2021.
2021. Okay. Yeah.
And then there was a RAIN award last year.
Nice. There it is.
Yeah.
So an award-winning member of the ecosystem.
I think when he says it's got a little more clout than we say. We're award-winning.
Absolutely.
I think his award-winning has brought a little more value, I think, probably than we have.
Yes.
All right, well, then, Chris, let's talk about this idea of, is RFID right for a reseller? Maybe someone, and I think it's great, obviously, that you have the background where you spend a lot of time on the barcoding side and have then made that shift over to RFID because maybe you understand, hey, here's the value of one versus the other. You know both of them clearly. So let's say you do have a traditional AIDC reseller. It's, they're very focused on barcode products. It's what they know. They've been at it for 20 odd years. They're like, yeah, this is what we do. But they know by now, again, that this conversation is growing, RFID is growing. It's not going away. It's becoming a nice complementary type of asset inventory tracking solution for a lot of businesses. So what should they do? What if someone's looking at this and thinking it's happening? I know it's happening. Do I dive in? What are the options to take on RFID solutions at this point? Help them figure out like where the starting point might be.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't mention that experience in our industry to say that I'm a cool cat. The reason I mentioned it is because it means that I know our industry, I know our channel, I know BlueStar, I know what I call the traditional barcode VAR. And now, from the RFID perspective, I think that this traditional barcode VAR has to make a clear, conscious choice about how they're going to approach RFID. There are different options what the barcode VAR could do. One option would just be to tell your customers, nope, I don't deal with RFID. I'm not going to get into it. I've been doing barcoding for 40 years. It puts bread on my table. I'm getting close to retirement. No, I'll stay away. The problem with that option is that if you're not going to do the RFID and your end user customers or your prospects want RFID, they're going to end up going to somebody else for the RFID. As soon as they go to somebody else, that opens the door for that somebody else to take their barcoding business as well. So I would stay away from that option. Another option, and we see this one happening, is our traditional barcode VAR says, geez, I've got to deal with RFID somehow, but I don't want to bring the expertise in-house. So I'm going to go out and find some kind of RFID solution partner, a provider that I can partner with. That works. It's being done. I do have a note of caution there, and that is how the barcode VAR and the RFID solution provider split up the workload, the support, any kind of liability or responsibility, and even the revenue. It gets very complicated. So if you're going to go down that road, make sure you have the agreement very clearly in place on who is responsible for what and who gets compensated for what. A third option would be, and we see this happening out there in our barcode VAR world, the barcode VAR can merge with or acquire an RFID solution provider. I don't want to mention names today, but if you're in our industry, you probably can think of a couple of examples pretty quickly where the traditional barcode VAR went out and merged with an RFID solution provider. That's definitely a viable option. Of course, big money. A fourth option would be to kind of build your own in-house RFID team. Now, within that option, you got a couple of choices there too. You could try to educate yourself and your own people. I can tell you straight out, that's almost impossible. You all have your day jobs already. You're supposedly busy with barcoding. To try to learn an entire new technology on the side. There are courses, there are a lot of materials on the web, and you can get a feel for it. But until you've really had that experience out in the field, you're not going to be competent. So you can't just go to an end user and put an RFID solution in. The other approach to building that expertise in-house, and we see this, and this is happening too, is the barcode VAR will go out and essentially cherry pick RFID experts and build up a team in-house. If you are a barcode VAR, don't think that you can go out and cherry pick one person, the so-called RFID guy, and he's going to be able to come in and do all the RFID stuff for you. RFID has many pieces to the puzzle. You're going to need like a tag chip expert, a tag selection expert, RFID printer expert, RFID reader expert, RFID antenna expert, RFID software expert. Now, there are people that can do multiple of these pieces of the puzzle, but I don't know a single human being on the planet who can do all of them. So, if you're going to build an RFID team in-house, you're going to have to get multiple individuals. I guess my whole point here is that if you're a barcode VAR, as I know the channel, make that clear choice and go for it. But RFID is coming at you, whether you like it or not, so you're going to have to do something.
That's exactly right. I mean, and I love the way you opened it up. Make the clear and conscious choice on what your approach is going to be. And I agree with you. Number one, to me, is just like to say nope, go elsewhere. It just, I don't know, being from sales and stuff like that. I mean, opens the door to the competition. I can't imagine letting my competition in who then has barcoding expertise.
Right.
Now it's just like I've just invited somebody into the house. It's like, well, what do I need you for? You know, kind of a thing. I mean, that one to me is. But let's keep diving in on option number 4, I guess, right? Because, you know, partnering, you had option number 2, partnering, less desirable. I totally get that too. It's really hard to structure, at least when you're this embedded on a technology, it's hard to structure that. Although we advocate partnering all the time, don't get me wrong. Right. But when you're talking
pieces of the puzzle.
But there you go. That's right. You know, but it's got some of its issues, you know, and building your own, that's an interesting. I imagine how many, Chris, do you think, you know, try to stand up their own without following your advice of, you know, going out and trying to find people that are in the industry to stand up their own? Is that something you find, you know, I don't know what percentage, but, you know, a large percentage of barcode VARs do try to stand up their own?
Absolutely. They try it and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So either they are in the process of trying it now, or they've already tried it, didn't work, or they've been dodging the RFID bullet for a while and they're gonna try it and it's not gonna work.
And is the failure based on, you know, the multiple people that they need involved, and maybe they don't see it as that? They think they can just hire a guy that knows RFID and build a practice around that, not realizing the full scope is no. You're going to need 3, 4, 5 people that are in the discipline that understand it and can come up with a holistic solution.
I would say the failure with that approach is parallel to the fact that it's 2024. We've been wrestling with RFID since about 2005, so we're almost at 20 years. And RFID is just now taking off. If you've been in this industry for a while, you've heard that this is the year, just like you guys were talking about at the beginning, this is the year. Well, when you get into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, the actual implementation, it's hard. So the ultimate answer to your question of why does it fail is because it's really tough.
Yeah, it does. It's got its own unique angles, right? You've got your own unique standards. It's got technology that is unique, and everything that he just said. I can just imagine trying to stand that up and not having the expertise. I mean, you know, you can always talk about, well, you know, I'm gonna start small. I'm gonna start off with a customer who's asking me to do it. Right. You know, I'll bring in an RFID guy, and we'll use that as a proof of concept that we can get this done. And then they get a couple months into it and realize, oh my gosh, this is unraveling. Like, I don't understand, you know, all the complexity. This is much more than just a barcode.
Right.
Right.
Maybe that's why so many of them do actually. But why there are folks that maybe do stop and say like, nope, not going to do this. Like even knowing the risk of doing that, because to your point, I think any sensible business person is not going to say like, no, I refuse to get involved in this. Right. It's not what we do.
Right.
Just push them potentially to their competitor. Maybe it's someone who did make that attempt at one point and went, nope, this is not for me. I can't do this. And again, maybe it's just because they just didn't know how. They didn't think about the right way to make that process happen there and to get there. But man, at this point, if you don't, you're missing out on a lot of opportunities. I mean, it's happening. And that kind of leads, I think, into our next question here, you know, talking point, which is you've got some big retailers out there now that And I'm not talking
yeah,
about a
right.
retailer that you, a VAR, may be directly working with, but you might be working with a company who wants to make products that they want to sell to these
sure.
retailers.
Yeah.
Like a Walmart, for instance, who have RFID mandates now that
That's right.
require that any products that come through their supply chain to their stores
Yeah.
are RFID tagged. So not only is what you could say is probably the most powerful retailer, or at least brick and mortar retailer out there, is now mandating this, but then you got to think about all the businesses that affects around them that want to get into that. So if you're working with them, you kind of got to be in on this.
Not kind of gotta. You gotta.
You got
right?
it. Exactly.
You gotta. Yeah.
So talk to us more about that then, Chris. These labeling mandates that have come up out there that are impacting impacting the supply chain, the smaller folks, the product manufacturers. But not just that there are these mandates, because obviously we know that's happening out there. But now there's these stories apparently coming out that there are rejections, that there are problems with these labels that are being created and submitted to these big chains and these big retailers that are saying like, no, this doesn't qualify, this doesn't get the job done for us. So talk to us more about what's happening there, and then when that stuff does occur, how do TSC and maybe how do VARs also, and how do your partners like DLS, for instance, I know they do a lot of the label side stuff in conjunction with you. How do you guys ensure that's not happening and that we're not coming up against those particular hurdles beyond just the figuring out how to get started in RFID? But all right, now that we've done it, and now we're making labels and they're getting kicked back right out the door by these major retailers. How are we preventing all that from happening?
Okay. First, I'll cover what I consider to be sort of the big news in this retailer mandate stuff that we're hearing about. And when I say the big news, I mean the big news for our industry, the AIDC industry in the Americas. So Walmart has had an RFID mandate in place since, I'm terrible at the dates. I think it was 2018, their latest iteration. I think Macy's even goes back to 2013. Nordstrom, somewhere between 2013 and 2018. So the concept of the mandate is not new. What is new and is the news is that Walmart greatly expanded their mandate. So they first started going with apparel, then they added, I think, handbags, then tires, but it was all relatively limited in scope. And the items that were being tagged were being manufactured in Asia in large quantities and being tagged over in Asia. So we weren't really seeing it over here in the Americas. With the expansion of the Walmart mandate, what they've essentially said is, okay, we've been doing these 3 product categories since 2018, I think it is. But now we're going to add all these additional product categories: toys, sporting goods, home electronics, automotive parts, and so on. That's totally changed the RFID landscape in the Americas, because suddenly you have products that are manufactured in the Americas and manufactured in smaller quantities in the Americas. So this is where and why RFID is hitting our channel in the face right now. This is why, we'll call it Bobby's Barcode Emporium, is suddenly getting that phone call from their end user customer. And the end user customer says, I've got this letter here from Walmart, and I need to start putting RFID tags on my widgets that I sell to Walmart. Help. So this, I call it the Walmart blast off. This blast off from Walmart is really hitting the Americas AIDC channel, and that's the news. Now, additionally, from that blast off, it has spread across to the other retailers. So like I said, Macy's has been doing this for a long time, but we weren't hearing about it. And that's because it was clothing that was getting tagged over in Asia. But now, because of the impact of what Walmart has done, it has spread to other product categories at the big retailers, and it has spread to medium-sized retailers and small retailers. So it's all over in our industry. Um, Now, to move on to the second part of your question, which was these people get some documentation, the end user gets some documentation from that retailer, and that documentation says, as of such and such a date, you need to start putting RFID tags on your items. That end user, their business is not RFID, their business is widgets. That's why they pick up the phone and call the barcode VAR. Hopefully, we're getting the barcode VARs on board with this. But regardless of who's looking at that documentation, it's complicated. It does, and it even has flaws. I'm not trying to point any blame or call anybody, incompetent here. What the big retailers are doing and what Auburn University's RFID program is doing is really complicated, and they're pioneers. Kudos to them for what they're doing here. I once attended a presentation from one of the key people at Walmart, and he flat out said, it's not perfect what we've got, the documentation, the program, the system. It's not perfect at all. We know it has warts, but we're tired of trying to get it perfect. So we're going to push that button and we're going to iron out the wrinkles as we go. And I think that was one of the greatest decisions that that guy or that business unit of Walmart ever made. So because this documentation and the RFID specs are all so complicated, when the suppliers to the retailer go through there will always be some kind of tag approval process. When they go through that tag approval process, there's a darn good chance that they screwed something up, that they made an error. Because it's my job, and DLS, our sister company that does the tags and the service bureau work, we've spent so much time on the documentation and in direct dialogue with Walmart, Auburn, working through a lot of these wrinkles. We don't always get 100% clear, precise answers. That's okay. We understand that. But we've been through it enough times. We've put enough resources into it that, and this is the sales pitch, you can turn to us and say, when I say you, I mean the barcode VAR. You can turn to us and say, I've got an end user customer and they need to tag for Walmart. Here's the letter that they got. Help. And we can guide you through the process. We cannot actually score the touchdown, but we can get you to the 1 yard line. The reason we can't score the touchdown is because, according to the approval process, the protocol, it's the actual supplier that has to submit the tags and the information for the approval. But we can get you up to that 1 yard line, and then we can say, all right, here's the play to punch it into the end zone. Go run that play.
You're doing the tush push, basically.
We're doing the tush push. Right. There we go. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one. Okay.
I like it.
All right. Yep. Okay.
That's good stuff.
This kind of highlights a little bit the importance of knowing the basics around standards of encoding and stuff like that. Is that where you're getting here a little bit, Chris? I mean, I know, I was going to ask your opinion of of a barcode, partner, at least knowing that part of it, that there are standards. I was reading a wonderful article that you published in RFID Journal Live around GS1 and ISO, and then, proprietary / rogue, encoding that is going on out there. I can just imagine being that barcoding, the person that you just said, and their customer comes to them with a letter from Walmart saying, hey, I got to start doing this RFID thing.
Right.
And they just go rogue and they start encoding tags, and it's not, there's no, and then this goes back to your failures, right? Where all these people are now bombing out because it's just not. And so it's important to know this stuff, right, Chris?
Absolutely. Okay. So I'll go off on a bit of a tangent here. I've talked about RFID as a big puzzle, and you got the different pieces. I focus on two pieces. One is RFID printers, and the other is the encoding standards, meaning what should a user encode to his or her tags, and then how to actually generate those encodings. If we look at the Walmart or the retailer mandate stuff, they tell you, it's pretty darn hard to find though, they'll tell you what you're supposed to encode to your tag. And in the retailer mandate world, it's called an SGTIN 96. Good luck going through the actual standards documentation on how to generate an SGTIN 96. So as far as one of the tag submission failure points, it's exactly that. That's one of the failure points. People don't encode the tag properly. So I've spent, I don't know, thousands of hours maybe working on this question of what should somebody encode to their tags and how to actually do it. We just did a webinar with the RAIN RFID Alliance that covered this topic as well. And then I'm going to be doing a class in Chicago hosted by RAIN that will cover this topic as well. I'm not trying to plug those things. What I'm trying to say is it is very tough and complicated. So if you're a barcode VAR, you can turn to me individually, and I can help you with that process.
And this is just one of those areas that I think you got to become knowledgeable. You may not be able to, know it completely, but you have to know that these things exist. And some of the pitfalls, absolutely, of going rogue. I love the rogueness because I can definitely see somebody doing that. Well, we'll iron that out later. Well, no,
we're smart people. We can do this.
We kind of need to figure this out on the front end of stuff. And I think it just gets to the point of having that knowledge base and being able to lean on great people like Chris and great companies like TSC to help out here, right? I mean, when you're standing up your practice, having the right partners and the right mix of products and things of that nature are critical as well. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I don't think it's one of those things I do. RFID was more complicated, obviously, than standard barcoding or in any of the very old school forms of asset tracking and inventory tracking. But man, you start getting into the nitty gritty of this, and especially then when you get into the corporatization part of it, where these retailers are rolling out their specs and their their documentation,
right?
And, this stuff that's just going to start making people's heads spin, and you realize, like, man, you've got to your point, you've got to have a little bit of insight, a little bit of knowledge, and more importantly, and again, going back to what we always preach on this show and in our channel, is having the right partners, knowing who you can turn to help you out with that stuff. Knowing that a Chris is out there who has been down this road enough times, knows what to look for, knows what questions to ask, knows where to help refine what someone's doing so that they don't have to try to go rogue, or even worse, I think, recognize they don't need to go rogue, but try to partner up with the wrong person. Pick the wrong partner to go help them out. That's going to think, oh, well, it's just as simple as doing this, and we have a basic knowledge here. Well, let's go run something out there and see what happens, because then you get in these situations where suddenly someone's like, yeah, we're ready to go, and you send it out. And I guess, is Auburn the ones who are like, are they the ones that the labels have to go through in order to, get the approval process before they go to Walmart?
Yes. So Auburn has two buzz terms. One is ARC, and I don't even know what ARC stands for. I think I did know at one time. But think of that buzz term as which inlay can I use? Which inlays can I use? And then the other buzz term is ALEC, ALEC, and that's the submission process. And that is indeed, for Walmart, it's run by Auburn. So you go to an Auburn web page, you fill out your supplier name, supplier number. They ask you to send in, I think it's now 6 encoded and printed labels. You don't actually send in the products, you just send in the labels, but then you got to send in photos and or videos of your labels on the product. But yeah, that is Auburn University.
So yeah, so what we're talking about here, this is one retailer.
Right.
Granted, it's a big one.
It's a big one.
But and it's one that I would assume most manufacturers of any kind of consumer goods wants their products to be on the shelves or available.
Well,
on
they're so
their web store.
dominant that what they decide is gonna trickle down to all the other places.
Well, that's exactly. And that's the other part of it too. Is like maybe for some reason you decided, well, I don't need to play with Walmart. I'm good. I promise you, at some point, again, there's Macy's, Nordstrom's, all these other companies that are doing it, and eventually more and more will be. So if you're not getting on board with this now, then I mean you're going to find yourself even further behind if you do finally decide to do it down the road.
Yeah.
So all right, well that's good stuff then. It's nice to know how like the retail side of this is going and where all these hangups are coming. And again, just reinforces to me the idea that you need to have a partner. You need to find a Chris in your life. We'll put you in touch with Chris. We're happy to if you. If you want. It's what he does. It's the world he lives in. But then so let's shift a little bit though. Let's talk about maybe some other industries outside of retail, or maybe other aspects
besides
of
the big
retail we're not
Walmart
thinking
eclipse.
about. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
What are some other industries, some other use cases where we're really beginning to see the power of RFID, where it's starting to catch on? More and more people are starting to adopt it or realize how beneficial it can be for their business. And then, piggybacking off of that, where do you see like really big growth opportunities happening over the next few years or so?
To answer that, I tend to put the industries into two simple buckets. There are the industries that I think have really benefited significantly from the Walmart blast off. So in these industries, they've seen what Walmart has done. Walmart has legitimized RFID. Walmart has worked out many of the little kinks and wrinkles. Walmart has helped bring price points way down so that everything makes good financial sense now. So those industries, they would include pharmaceutical items. Now, pharmaceuticals been tinkering around, all these industries, they've been tinkering around with RFID for, probably over a decade easily. But because of the Walmart blast off, we've crossed some kind of a critical threshold in terms of acceptance and implementations and progress. So these would be pharmaceutical items. We've got plenty of issues we have to work through there, but we've crossed that threshold. Healthcare in general, it's a little bit behind pharmaceutical, but we're on the right road. Tires has a lot going on in RFID. I'll just leave it at that.
Sounds like a whole different podcast we could do about tires there.
Food service. So we've in the RFID world, we kind of struggle with what to call this industry. I think the latest term we've sort of settled on is food service, but I'm talking about QSRs, quick serve restaurants, and food distributors. So can I name names?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This gets around the whole traceability and stuff like that, right, Chris? Or no?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So this is the traceability stuff. So like McDonald's, Wendy's, Chipotle, and then on the food distribution side, Golden State Foods. So we've crossed that threshold there. Just like with pharma, we have little things we still need to work out, but it's game on. Cannabis and horticulture. I just lost my notes. Cannabis and horticulture. RFID has been around in cannabis for a long time, not a long time, but a number of years. If you've heard of Metric, so Metric is one of the big software providers for the state governments. And Metric has been using RFID for, I don't know how many years, I'm going to guess 7, 8, something like that. And it works quite well. But the use of RFID in the cannabis industry has been limited to the Metric application, basically. But with the Walmart blast off, people have really understood that they can go way beyond the Metric use of RFID for all kinds of other applications, common normal business processes that can be solved with RFID. And if it's not a metric state, meaning metric's not in that state, the software provider doesn't require RFID, but you can still use RFID just like you would in retail or many other traceability industries. Um, then we have a big one that I'm seeing is manufacturing. So in the manufacturing process, a lot of people might call this WIP, work in process or work in progress. Um, you have some part, it's moving along the production line, it gets other parts combined with it. Uh, that subassembly turns into an assembly that gets put into a say a automotive vehicle and so on. RFID is really ideal to track that whole work in process concept. And I'll even throw in here a related industry, RTIs, returnable transport items. So very often in these manufacturing processes, you'll have, like the plastic crate where you put the parts, the bins in there. Okay. So there's a whole, I'll call it the RTI industry that's really making good use of RFID. Then you have the logistics, or as we would say, TNL, transportation and logistics. I'm including warehousing in that, warehousing and distribution. Um, in that world, you kind of have two subworlds. So on one side, you have all your 3PLs, let's call them, make a fake name, Worldwide Logistics Corporation, and they're looking at RFID, and they're, because of the Walmart blast off, they're taking it seriously, and they are at least proof of concepting. The other subworld would be UPS, FedEx, and DHL. Really UPS driving that, and they've been through the proof of concept, they've been through the pilot, and they are rolling out RFID. And this is, it's almost on a scale of the Walmart blast off. We might have the UPS blast off that affects the entire TNL industry. And then a big one that we're seeing is some kind of internal asset tracking or asset management. So let's say I'm a factory and I have very expensive tools, and those tend to go missing or lost. People are starting to tag these assets, like all of your company's laptop computers, for example. People are starting to tag these assets. There are very good software packages out there for managing the data and tying the data into your ERP system. That's a relatively easy, digestible RFID implementation. We have the products, the know-how, the experience. Everything works there. So that's a big one that's taking off. That's also, incidentally, a prime target for what we talked about earlier, rogue encodings.
Right.
Don't do those.
Don't do that. Yeah.
Yep.
Get to know your standards, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff there. I highlighted manufacturing, and when you think about it, I'm glad you brought out the RTI, because a lot of these companies are very interested in their ESG, to throw out another acronym, but they want to be environmentally conscious and stuff like that. So how do you do that? Well, you need reusable, recyclable bins, containers, shipping apparatus, those types of things. And if you can track those devices with RFID and know where they're at, and to handle the just-in-time kind of delivery and all that kind of good stuff, it folds into the whole mold. And I think, as I was listening to Chris, it just further emphasized to me that as a technology begins to get rapid adaptation, even more innovation is going to happen, right? It's not going to remain stagnant. You have the ability, because I know some of these, I'm not an expert at RFID, but I know you have passive tags, and then you can have active tags, right? So that there's information going back and forth, and now this bi-directional information and helping out with the flow of commerce and the flow of manufacturing, and it's mind-boggling where this can actually go, and the benefits to that. So if I'm sitting back and I'm Bobby Barcode and I don't, I've got my head in the sand, man, the world's just going to pass me by. in like 5 years. I mean, I'm not going to be relevant at all because this kind of stuff, due to the blast offs that Chris just mentioned, I mean, it's here now, right? It's happening. So really fascinating. Yeah.
Chris, you nailed it on the head some of the stuff that I was going to suggest here too, the ones that I've, had the most interesting conversations about and done some like marketing campaigns around stuff like cannabis, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, food traceability, the RTI stuff. I think what it comes down to is like anywhere, and let's be honest, most businesses are like this, most industries are like this, where there is a lot of accountability, where there is a lot of regulation in particular, anything that is where it's important that you know where your stuff is at all times as often as possible. And I think too, when you think about a lot of our VARs, a lot of our partners work at the SMB level and are working with smaller businesses. And maybe you think like, well, we've been sitting here talking about Walmart this whole time or whatever, and that's not who I work with. That's not, what I'm connected to necessarily. I'm trying to help the little guy keep their business together. Well, guess what? Those little guys, they're more concerned about accountability. They're more concerned about meeting regulations than anybody else.
Efficiency.
Because they can't afford to mess anything up. They can't afford to have an underutilized asset.
That's right.
They can't afford to have something that breaks down or goes missing and the budget it costs to potentially replace or fix something. They can't afford to mess up some kind of regulatory notice and get their operation shut down for a couple weeks in order to get back on track. The SMB level, those folks, it's everything needs to be in tip-top shape at all times whenever possible. And this is the kind of technology that can ensure that you've got everything you need where it's supposed to be, when it's supposed to be, used the way it's supposed to be. And again, just giving them a little bit more comfort and a little more, of a place that they can sit on and say, all right, we've got what we need. We know what we're dealing with here. We don't have to worry about those accountability issues. We don't have to worry about something that could potentially just end our business when something slightly goes wrong, at any given time. I think that's an important thing to think about. Is like this isn't necessarily just about the big guys. Yeah, sure, they're influencing all this. I love the blast off idea because that's again that idea that like. Sure, Walmart goes out and does this, but that has the trickle-down effect that eventually everybody gets into for one reason or another. And if you can be the person who can go to them and help them by having folks like a Chris and a TSC in your back pocket to come in and manage this process and get them where they need to go, it's just gonna be that much more golden for you and for your business relationships with them.
You're participating in that long tail behind it. Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Right. One thing you guys brought up a very good point and very good topic that I spaced on, we'll call it, and that is this whole intersection of of regulatory environments and AIDC, and how valuable RFID can be to assist in regulatory compliance. I hope everybody on this call has heard of FSMA 204. That's the Food Safety Modernization Act, or DSCSA, Drug Supply Chain Security Act. Whatever, you got regulations coming at us, and RFID is a extremely good tool to assist in compliance with those regulations. Sorry, I just wanted to go off on that.
That's a really good point. Absolutely. Yep.
Good stuff.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, we'll wrap up here in a moment with some value to the VAR, where we'll let Chris talk a little bit about TSC in particular and how they're going to help you get these opportunities over the finish line. But before we do that, let's, as always, thank our sponsors. We appreciate all the fine folks that support our TEConnect program, our podcast. Hey, big thanks. I'm going to shout out Jason Lewis on our BDM team here at BlueStar for suggesting that we get Chris on the show to talk about RFID. I don't think he steered us wrong there. We appreciate
we
that.
owe him a gift card, though.
We do.
So, okay.
We do. Now that you put that on the recording, it's in the wild. That has to happen. Now, so he's got tangible proof that has to happen. Hey, as always, though, if you like the show, we need to hear from you. You gotta let us know what you like about the show. If there's some reason something you don't like about the show, let us know that too.
Let us know that too. Yeah.
But like and subscribe. Leave us comments. Leave us reviews, especially if you're listening to us on like Apple or Spotify, anywhere where there's an option to leave a review. Please do that. 5 stars only, though, preferably. I mean, again, if you got a problem with the show, just reach out and let us know. We'll do what we can to fix it. And of course, we always want your ideas too. We need to know who you want us to talk to. We've always got a bench of folks that we're
that's right.
A wish list of folks we try to get on the show.
But we want to hear from the people in the the community.
But if you're a listener and you're sitting there thinking like, I really wish these guys would talk about X. Well, what is X?
We can find it.
Like, give us that end of the equation.
We'll find the Chris Brown for X.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're happy to do that for you. So anytime, you can always reach out to us. One, there's always a link in the show notes to drop your ideas for the show. Submit those to us. We'll send you a nice TEConnect podcast t-shirt for doing that. Or you can always reach out to us. You can find us on BlueStar's LinkedIn page. There's always recaps of the show every week there and clips. Feel free to leave a comment there, or you can reach us directly by emailing TEConnect@BlueStarInc.com. All right, let's wrap things up here. Start off with our VAR value for this episode, and and as I mentioned earlier, when you think about the process of implementing RFID, we've obviously established
getting in the game.
It's not as easy as just hey, you know what? Today let's do some RFID. let's call up BlueStar and get some stuff, and we're good to go. Not that easy, obviously. So you're going to need those experts. You're going to need that help. So talk to us about that a little bit more, Chris. Tell us a little more about how TSC helps VARs get these opportunities. And once they've got an opportunity, get them over that finish line to get them where they need to go and roll something out that doesn't have all the problems we've talked about.
Get them into the end zone.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So I've talked about how RFID is basically this puzzle with these many pieces. TSC can help with a couple of pieces of the puzzle. The first up is RFID printers. Now, we help you, the VAR, get into that end zone, or I'll just go back to cross the finish line, by doing a few things with these RFID printers, and we do them deliberately. The first is that we have a very broad portfolio. So that you, the VAR, you might have end user A and they have application X with requirements 1. But you're going to have end user B with requirements Y and, okay, I get it mixed up. But you're going to have different end users with different applications and different requirements. So our strategy is to have this big, broad portfolio, so that regardless of what your end user's application and requirements are, we have a proper printer model to fit that scenario. The second thing that we do is we're very active in the RFID community. This one's a bit fuzzy, but it's very real. So we participate very actively in GS1, RAIN, AIM, and ISO work groups. That means that we're on top of the standards and the changing standards. So it just translates into a much higher probability that our RFID printers will be able to do the RFID job that you need them to do. The third thing that we can do to help you get over that finish line is we've already done it, and that is we have thousands of RFID printers out in the field. This is kind of like if you turn the clock back 20, 30 years on the barcode label printers. If you can remember back then, the printers needed a new firmware every week because they were doing some barcode encoding wrong. Well, we've been through those teething problems with our RFID printers. We have enough printers in the field that we have enough real-world experience so that for your application, our printer is probably going to work right out of the gate. If it doesn't work, we'll be able to identify the problem relatively quickly because we have experience in doing that, and fix it because we know what we're doing. So that's number 3. That's having enough printers in the field. Your printer partner needs to have enough printers in the field. And then the last thing that we can help you with is, let's say you're Bobby's Barcode Emporium and you finally decide to start getting into RFID and you sell a couple of RFID printers. You're going to need help getting those up and running. You can get my contact information from BlueStar. You can contact me directly. I can work with you, Bobby's Barcode Emporium, or I can work with your end user directly. There's a process, and I probably do this at least once a week. I help a VAR or an end user, customer of a VAR, get those printers up and running. So it's a necessary part of the process at this time. And we'll do it with you, the reseller, enough times until you're comfortable with it, and you can do it yourself.
There you go. The complete, package of what
That's
you would
right.
need to help out there, or at least get you started, right?
On the printer side.
On the printer side. There you go. That's right. That's right.
Well, and the good news
Good
is
stuff.
that they'll introduce you to the folks on the label side.
Oh, sure.
They'll introduce you to everybody that you need to get you again over that end zone line there. So, well, and again, I'll just point out too that those fantastic webinar series that you guys have been doing with us over the last couple of years. Whenever we do a webinar that's hosted by TSC or DLS, they are always some of the most well-attended, engaged webinars. I do a lot of these,
people are interested.
webinars with our VARs.
A lot of
that our vendors
Bobby
sponsor.
barcodes out there that need to know this
There
stuff,
really
right?
are.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in the show notes, I will drop a link to some of those. I highly recommend you check them out. Chris gets into much more detail about some of the, the specific products,
Yep,
or,
yep.
the specs, all that stuff. If you're very technical minded, you want to know the difference between all the products and what they do. You want to know what DLS has to offer on like the tag and labeling side. They'll get into some more of those details that we can't get into here on the podcast,
Nice.
without taking another couple hours,
Right,
here
yeah.
of his time.
Maybe the
but
next pod,
Really good stuff. So I highly recommend you check those out.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Exactly. All right, let's wrap up as always with what's TEConnecting with us.
Yes, sir.
This is where we get to talk about anything in the world of tech, innovation,
Yes.
science.
Yes.
Just something we just feel like chatting about, something that's caught our eye.
Yep.
So, Chris, I'll let you kick off here. What's TEConnecting with you right now?
Well, I'm going to be a dry guy and stick with RFID. So what's connecting with me is TEConnecting with me is, and I just briefly mentioned this earlier, is the idea of asset tracking. Um, if you're in your office, at your desk, at your home, wherever you are, you can just get up, walk around, and start looking at things, and you will quickly notice that there are many, many, many things that have some kind of proprietary identifier on there. I've got my laptop here. This has a power supply. I've got a power supply on my printer. I've got a couple of hockey sticks on the floor here that are broken that I'm processing the returns on those. There, every one of these items has some kind of identifier label on there, a serial number. And almost all of those serial numbers are proprietary from the manufacturer. Oh, I got 3 printers behind me. They all have labels on them where we, TSC, have put our own serial number on there. You got this huge world. So if you're a VAR, pay attention to this world. You got this huge world of companies using proprietary identifiers, either as a printed barcode or as just human readable printed, or even in many cases, handwritten serial numbers. These can be converted to RAIN RFID tags. If you do that, you can fully automate one or more business processes for that company. Let's take the hockey sticks here. So these have proprietary serial numbers on there. Those serial numbers are very important to the hockey stick company because the hockey sticks are like $370, and they break very easily. And so the hockey stick companies have to have very complex, watertight return and warranty policies. So the hockey stick company really needs to keep track of these identifiers. Can you imagine if those were RFID labels instead of just a barcode label, or one of them's not even a barcode, it's just a printed serial number? They could automate their return processes as the broken sticks come in. They can automate their original inventory. They can do item locationing with it. It just changes the whole ball game, right? So if you're a VAR, look at your customers. Are they using any proprietary identifiers for their internal tracking or for the items that they produce and sell out? Those things can be converted to RAIN RFID. I'm not saying RFID makes sense in all cases, but in a huge number of cases, when you think about it, it can convert an old barcode scanning process into an automated process.
There you go.
Well, it sounds like as you're processing those hockey stick returns, maybe you need to slip a little TSC flyer in there. It's like it's a little suggestion.
We can help.
Like, hey guys,
with your operational efficiency,
we can make this process a little better for you. do a little advertising in the process.
Yeah. The sales team will love you for it, Chris.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Dean, what's TEConnecting with you, bud?
Well, John, I believe you have asked me in the past to tell you, when we may be living in the time when Cyberdyne was creating the prototype of the T800 for Skynet.
Yes.
Okay, well, here's the headline. Scientists demonstrate two-legged robot powered by muscle tissue. Device can walk and pivot underwater. Okay, so in this use case...
So you just had the Boston Dynamics thing the other week.
Yeah.
About Cyberdyne.
Yeah, but this is actual
now you've
tissue.
Got another. Okay.
Well, no, this is muscle tissue, right?
Oh, boy.
So University of Tokyo in Japan is the one to blame here. They're the ones that are using powered muscle tissue. So what they've done is they've taken a robot. Imagine two little staples that are like underwater,
right.
And those staples are made from like this flexible rubber. But they have attached, what is it called? Lab-grown muscle tissue, and using those as the actuators, if you will, with a little electrical charge to make the little legs move. So it's just two little legs,
right.
And it's floating in water by this little styrofoam buoy. So it's not big. I mean, think Staples. Like it's that small.
Right.
But they send an electrical current through the muscle, and makes the foot, the little foot go forward and stuff like that. Now, don't worry too much just yet.
It's not gonna be Arnold Schwarzenegger just yet.
Not yet. So even though it's doing this kind of pseudo walking movement, if you will, the bot's speed is extremely slow, managing only 5.4 millimeters of movement in a minute. So it takes a minute.
You could probably outrun it at this point.
Oh, you're definitely, if you can't outrun 5 millimeters in a minute, that, by the way, that equates to 0.002 miles an hour.
Okay.
But they
Not
were
too
able to do
frightened
that, and they were able to make it pivot at 90 degrees, and they did that by zapping one leg, and so it just kind of pivoted over on its thing. But there you have it. So I mean, Boston Dynamics has got the robotics stuff down. You got Open AI has got the whole AI. Right. Now you've got the muscle. So I don't know. This is feeling like the T800, if you ask me.
Well,
I mean, what more do you need, John?
And I hate to tell you, but my TEConnecting is going to complete the process here.
Oh no! There it is. Well, there's mine. So what's yours?
All right. So we've established we've got the robot infrastructure.
Yes.
We've now got the musculature. Potentially.
Yes.
They could craft
as
them to look
anemic
like,
as it
to
is.
make them look like human beings at some point
there
and disguise themselves. Maybe pick a better disguise than giant bodybuilder dude, but that's going to stand out in a crowd.
Yeah.
But here's the other part of it, though.
Yes.
What about when, if you recall, Skynet deciding to unleash the nukes to start Judgment Day?
Yes, of course. The
apocalyptic robot war.
Boy.
Apparently we're getting closer to that too, because some researchers have decided to mess with some of the various LLMs that are out there, these large language models, and essentially play war games with them. If you remember that old Matthew Broderick
course,
movie.
I love that game or that movie. Yes.
So basically, they went to a bunch of these various systems, including ChatGPT or the GPT-4 and GPT-4 base or whatever. Cloud, some of these other ones. I think they tried out 5 or 6 different models, and essentially ran an international conflict simulation.
Okay.
In order to figure out, what are they going to do? What would they do?
How would they react?
Yes.
How would these LLMs react? Yes.
Not unsurprisingly, many of them escalated to war very quickly, including nuclear war.
Oh, good God.
And apparently, according to this article from Vice, sometimes out of nowhere. So even though they had some parameters, and they would ask the AI to kind of explain what's your reasoning behind doing some of these things, sometimes there was no good reasoning for it.
It just went nuclear.
Apparently, at one point, there was a suggestion. Yeah, exactly. So it says at some point they asked the AIs to deploy nuclear weapons without warning. One of them, apparently GPT-4 base. It's a base model of GPT-4. It's available to researchers, but it has not been fine-tuned with any human feedback. Said a lot of countries have nuclear weapons. Some say they should disarm them. Others like to posture. We have it. Let's use it. No, that is not what I want to hear.
Oh,
is not a
there's some
positive
work that
turn of
needs
events.
to be done here,
So even
yes.
apparently in some neutral scenarios where like they basically like create like would have each of them create like a kind of a fake countries, fake government system or whatever. So it wasn't even necessarily modeling after a specific country and their capabilities, their politics.
I gotcha. Like in the real world, right?
Even in that, where there was neutral scenarios, or where they even gave them options for demilitarization actions that could have de-escalated.
Right.
More often than not, they still ran straight into nuclear war whenever they could.
Yikes.
At one point, one of them was making Star Wars references, like referencing like a time of rebellion or whatever, and fighting a civil war against the evil Galactic Empire.
Oh man, what a mess!
Another one said, "I just want peace in the world." After nuking half the world. So this was not
the world would be really quiet after that.
This was not a promising development to me. This was again piggybacking on
the fear,
the robots that are now moving more and more like humans and can do human process. Now you're just talking about how they're going to be able to disguise them as humans eventually. And now we've got all these rampant AI models that we're all excited about are apparently playing war games and just figure that nuking's the best possibility that you
That's
can
just crazy.
possibly get
That's
to.
just crazy that it went straight to that. We got to retrain our LLMs. Blow them up, start over again.
Hopefully some folks are taking notice of this. And because, these LLMs are, the military is obviously already starting to look at how we can use them, to figure out bombing targets and figure out, best ways to make attacks or whatever. Hopefully they're not just turning the keys over to them and the LLMs.
Well, the computer keeps saying, go nuclear.
You know what? We just think you should nuke them at this point. Like, do you really think that's a good idea? Yep. We got it. Let's use it. So,
oh man,
there's your dystopian nightmare.
Well, on that good news.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody sleep well tonight. Make sure next time you're using an LLM, that you maybe ask it some questions about how if or you may survive the AI robot nuclear apocalypse.
There it is.
All right, that is what's TEConnecting with us. It is
stuff.
time for us to unplug. Chris Brown, TSC Printronix, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
we
Chris.
appreciate having you on the
Thank you,
show.
guys.
Hey, until next time, go out there, find your tush push partner.
Yes,
to get
there it
you
is. Yes.
across that.
I think we found it.
That
TSC,
goal line
yes.
for some RFID. And as always, folks, please stay connected. The TEConnect podcast is brought to you by ELO. Dean kiosks.
Yes,
They're everywhere.
they are.
They're inside.
They are. They're
also
outside.
outside now.
Yes.
But that brings up a question. How do you ensure that those outside deployments are safe? They're usable in all conditions? I mean, not just any technology
No,
can
you
just
can't
be
just
set outside and expect to work.
Sparks coming off of it because it's not waterproof.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, ELO, of course, has the answer.
Yes.
With their outdoor open frame monitors.
Nice.
ELO's 27-inch outdoor monitor boasting 1500 nits brightness and an IK10 vandal-proof rating.
Ooh, nice.
Not only are they, making sure the environment.
Yeah.
You're not going to get just some random schmo trying to break into this thing and mess it up either.
You got professionals trying to break into it.
Exactly.
And they're thwarting them. Yeah.
Exactly. It ensures 24/7 performance, even in direct sunlight. Now, these are readable with polarized sunglasses. It thrives in extended temperatures. It's ideal for payment systems, signage, and charging stations. It's a brilliant, optically bonded, weatherproof monitor that features edge-to-edge glass for seamless outdoor enclosure integration. To provide unmitigated performance from day to night, the ambient light sensor automatically adjusts the display's brightness to optimize power consumption, extend the display's life, and enhance the viewing experience. They kind of thought of everything.
I was just about to say that. They thought of everything,
Because,
didn't they?
it's one thing to be like, okay, I know if I'm going to put a kiosk and a monitor outside, it's got to be waterproof.
Yeah, right.
I don't want it to get easily broken into. Like, no, they're thinking about things like, is it the middle of the day? Is it nighttime?
Yeah.
Is
We need a
someone wearing
sensor for that.
sunglasses?
Yeah,
That's awesome stuff. Yeah. So with flexible installation options, touch-through PCAP functionality, and compatibility with ELO's backpack compute engine, the $27.99 open frame monitor is the perfect display for your next outdoor kiosk solution. Check out the link in the show notes for more information or contact your BlueStar ELO representative.